been a hard weekend. It left me high and dry. I've been going through the ringer. I need you in my life. Time seems crazy. I'm stranded in the desert. This life gets so hot, I need a sip of you, God. 'Cause you're like water when I'm thirsty, yeah. Drink, drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink, drink. Ooh. It's warm down here. It's hard to breathe. It's burning my eyes, Lord. So hard to see. I'm quite parched now. I need a savior. Come quench my thirst, Lord. Because you're like water for the thirsty. I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink. Water for the thirsty. I drink.
It's like water for the thirsty. Truthfully, our souls parched. You won't find them when you seek them with your whole heart. It's so hard to stay consistent through the word I'm reading. 'Cause the time is coming soon when every eye gon' see him in the clouds above. This is about a love that quenches the thirst. What the world offers is not enough. Taste and see from this fountain spring, you'll be lining up to get a drink. Refreshing ink flowing out of cups. This life they gotta touch, you liberate them out of cuffs. The faith is undivided trust, created us up out of dust. He's worthy of fresh well of living water for the thirsty. Give her honor the first thing that I do when I'm waking up. It's everlasting life to all who desire to drink
You're
it up.
like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Been a hard weekend. It left me high and dry. I've been going through the ringer. I need you in my life. Time seems crazy. I'm stranded in the desert. This life gets so hot, I need a sip of you, God. 'Cause you're like water when I'm thirsty, yeah. Drink, drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink, drink. Ooh. It's warm down here. It's hard to breathe. It's burning my eyes, Lord. So hard to see. I'm quite parched now. I need a savior. Come quench my thirst, Lord. Because you're like water for the thirsty. I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink. Water for the thirsty. I drink.
It's like water for the thirsty. Truthfully, our souls parched. You won't find them when you seek him with your whole heart. It's so hard to stay consistent through the word I'm reading. Cause the time is coming soon when every eye gon' see him in the clouds above. This is about a love that quenches the thirst, but the world offers is not enough. Taste and see from this fountain spring, you'll be lining up to get a drink, refreshing ink flowing out of cups. This life they gotta touch, you liberate them out of cuffs. Your faith is undivided trust, created us up out of dust. He's worthy of fresh well of living water for the thirsty. Give her honor the first thing that I do when I'm waking up. It's everlasting life to all who desire to drink
You're
it up.
like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Been a hard weekend, it left me high and dry. I've been going through the ringer, I need you in my life. Time seems crazy, I'm stranded in the desert. Just like you're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink.
Alright, good night everybody. Welcome to Water for the Thirsty. It's another first Friday. Almost to the end of season 5, our 5th year. Tonight with us, the regulars from First Fridays. Whew. Kendrick, Avni, Jared. We're here to chop it up about some of the stuff we've read for the month of June and May. Kendrick, when was the last time you were here?
I was here like
Last time we were on.
it was last time we were on.
Right, that's all I'm asking.
I felt it was.
I was asking because we had an extra week.
I was like, man,
We had an extra week. We had an extra week in
Like,
between.
What?
And
Yeah, I was here.
it's just been a while since we've been.
Yeah, we had the. Oh, that's why we had the fifth.
Correct.
The fifth Friday.
Yeah, that's what's going on. So yeah, man.
Avanique was here too.
I was here.
Yeah, she was.
Fellas night.
Fellas night, is it?
Did
That's
you have a
what it was
fellas night?
called. That's what it said on
Never
Facebook.
heard of a fellas night.
That's what it said on Facebook, and then I was like, I shouldn't go, should I?
Nah, it was good. You know, rose among the thorns. That's what they call it. Huh?
I mean, I'm not a rose. So
Shut up.
I don't want to be a thorn either.
Oh, you want to be Cameron?
I don't know, like I don't know, like a aloe vera plant, like a. I don't know.
You said an aloe vera plant. All right, Avanique, talk to me. Tell me about how the Bible reading plan has been treating you, what God has been saying to you, what you learned about God, what you learned about yourself, all that good stuff from our Bible reading plan.
So, this is a little far left. It's not that far left, but it's slightly far left.
Far left of what, center?
Yeah. Where is it? So, Judges 2.
Hey, Ryan.
Judges 2.
Yeah. Pretty much when it was talking about
You're going real far back.
Yeah.
That's like February.
I haven't been.
No,
I
I'm
mean,
I'm messing with you. Go ahead. Judges 2.
February. No, but when it was talking about how pretty much everyone. Wait, let me just open it. Oh, it's already open. So Judges 2 verse 10. After that whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what He had done for Israel. And when I was reading it, I was like, that's really weird. How comes they don't know God and what He did for their parents or their ancestors? And it really bugged me. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, were their parents not telling them the stories, or did the stories kind of get lost in translation? Like, they clearly had the rules, but they didn't really know the God behind the rules. Mm-hmm. And so I started thinking about today and how we are now, where we it's far left, but I kind of feel like we're doing the same thing, in that we pass on rules from generation to generation, but we don't really tell the next generation the God of the rules and what happened. Like, there's a level, there's not much transparency. And I'm wondering if that causes what happens in Judges. Like, everybody I'm just do what I think is right in my own eyes.
Go back, not the whole thing, but go through it one more time. The reason why. So
they passed down the rules, but they didn't really pass down what God had done for them and who God was to them. Mm-hmm. And so the result of that is that their children kind of started going all over the place and wilding out. And so I'm kind of thinking, like, is it...
That's been your theme the past couple times.
Has it?
She's wilding out.
Just a pattern.
I'm just joking.
No, it's been rules versus...
Right. That has been my thing. I am there in my life. Yeah, I am there in my life where... We're not going to talk about that. We'll talk about that after.
That's what we're...
I am at the place in my life where this is going to sound real, real harsh, and please don't nobody get offended. I kind of feel brainwashed. And like I had certain issues come up, and I couldn't. My only reason for why I didn't do certain things, or the reasons why I couldn't do certain things, was simply because I'm Adventist. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. You can't tell this to your children. Like, and it kind of went through a phase where I was just really angry about it, and I was like,
angry about how you process it.
No, I felt angry about the fact that I was brainwashed.
Oh, okay.
Well, I feel brainwashed. I'm sure that was not my mother's intentions. But I just felt like, yo, this isn't it.
So, to mirror the two, did you know about the God of your ancestors?
No. I knew the rules.
I didn't actually knew the God. I actually knew about the God.
No.
And the rules did not reveal to you anything about the God.
So it revealed. It showed me a side that I don't necessarily like. So what I saw from the rules was. So you didn't
know about the God.
But I don't know if that's who God really is, though.
But you knew about the God.
I knew about a God.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I was wondering if anybody was going to change this to I was going to let it go.
Yeah, but I knew that God didn't want me to watch TV on Saturday. Didn't want me to do things that were fun on Saturdays. I knew that God didn't. Well, I was told that God didn't want me to wear certain clothes. God didn't want me to wear jewelry. God didn't want me to do this and that. Do this. So it's like, here you go. Here are the rules. But there was never a, let me be transparent with you about real life.
Was there a conversation about why people said God didn't want you to do this?
No. Okay. But I grew up in a Caribbean church and a Caribbean household. So there really isn't much.
So you can drink alcohol, but you have to be at Sabbath school.
No, as long as it's in a fruit cake,
Okay,
it's
yeah,
fine. But you can't drink it. But
because it all cooks.
Because when it is in the oven, like
it
the
cooks
harmful
out.
element gets away in the oven. Like, yeah.
no, but I just, for me, I've kind of been stuck there, and I thought about the verse. I think it's in Revelations that says they overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. But how are people overcoming if we're not really talking about our testimonies? Like, how do we're not sharing, and yes, people can overcome, but I feel like there are certain things that are happening that can be avoided if we were just transparent with people, with
Like
each other
what?
in the community. So I'll use the current example.
Like
From-
AIDS. But that's fine. Go ahead.
No, but that's the thing. So okay, I'll use that. So that's the thing. When I was growing up,
Sorry though.
no, it's a good example. When I was growing up, when I was in junior high or high school, one or the other,
Wrong with you?
I was a peer educator, and one of the
Uh-huh.
things that we had to do was we had to learn how to hold training sessions on teaching our peers about safe sex, safer sex, different STDs, different STIs, and like, we would go to the mall to do different presentations, and stuff. People just show up, belly bump, or people get sick, and stuff just happens in the church. Stuff happens, and I'm like, yo, we don't talk about this stuff at all, and so there's just consequences. Like, stuff is passing around amongst people in the church because we won't talk about this stuff.
How is that learning about the God?
I don't necessarily know.
Is there relation for you? I'm not saying that there isn't, but we started talking about these people not knowing
The
the
laws.
God, and not knowing what He had done, and then we were equating it to your experience about not knowing the God, but knowing about a God.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're talking about the testimonies of the people, and I'm wondering, is there a connection for you?
I think there
between the
is
two?
a connection because my testimony is my story, and a part of the story is, listen, I was in bondage in Egypt, and this dude showed up and was like, yo, we're leaving, and it seemed like a really impossible situation, but we got out, and then we got to this huge ocean, and we didn't know where we were going, and Pharaoh was behind us, and we were like, that was it, and then all of a sudden the ocean opens. Like, that's a testimony, that's a story. But if you don't talk about that to the next generation, then they won't not that they won't know, but I feel like they might suffer a little bit more, or they may have to figure out a different way because no one told them, hey, listen, you might have a sea in front of you, but a couple years ago we were in front of a sea, a literal sea, and it opened.
I think people are at a disadvantage the longer time goes away from that
From an event or an experience.
that particular experience, right? Because I just believe that we're experiential people. Like we I learn from experiences, right?
That's true.
I think most people do. And those things that occur or happen to you in real time impact you the most, as opposed to, there are times when I can go back through things I've written down and all that. It's like, man, like God did all that. But it's not like TV or the movies where like you're sitting there, you're going there under the movie, you actually see them go back and they're reliving it, and it's very, it's not, you can't really touch it. So I think number one, the children, as you move through generations, are just going to be at a disadvantage, right? Especially when they didn't have it as hard. Like, now they're settled.
I was about to say that was the other thing.
They're
building structures. They're not living in
like
tents anymore.
Correct. And so there's all these different things. But to your point, there also is value, especially as kids get older, and you grow up and move from childhood to adulthood. There is value in knowing the stories, because I think there are times when you can identify There are things that you go through or whatnot, and you can call back to a story or value what you heard in a different way. The kind of going back to what you were saying though, these days I think we get very caught up in the why. And the why, we're always looking for an explanation as to why, and although I think I like whys, right? I encourage the why. But I think more important than the why is the who. And that, like, the who should help to give context.
But they're not even...
And not the what's. Like, the what's are the rules and all that kind of stuff. But the who kind of should give context, and that should be the focus. Because when you look back, you say,
when the who is abstract.
So that's what I was going to say.
And far away.
Right.
Because, like, when they lived in the tents, the who was in the center of the tent and everybody could see it all day, every day.
Sure.
When they move into the land, if I go and I'm living in Galilee, far in the north of the land, the tent with the who is down in the south of the land and is almost 3 days journey or more to get to it. So I don't have like an active constant interaction or frame of reference with the who in the new setting. So there's that kind of spatial difference.
You do, but that's the thing. You do through the stories. But right, it's through the testimony. It gives you the care. It starts giving you some of the characteristics of that who, right, and then you're able to hear those stories. That's what I'm saying. I think what she's saying is 100% right. There's value to those stories because there's a context of the who that is being developed.
Hang on there. So when I'm not opening it, when it's not open, I can see it moving. But when it is open on mine, it's not. Yes, Darian said we have a bad connection.
It looks good here, but
yeah.
Start it over.
No. Check to see if I'm on the phone or on the.
So what's this showing here?
I'm on the Wi-Fi. I just wonder if I switch from one to the next, if it's going to cut the feed. Is that? Are we back on?
How do you know from here?
You just try to play it and see if you get movement. So yeah, I just try to track it from here, turn the volume up. Our connection is spotty.
Yeah.
It looks like it's better now. You getting a comment there? I see a comment rolling up there.
Ron said it's playing
good
on
YouTube. Yeah. So yeah.
Is it possible to share the YouTube link on?
Yes, you can do that. It's just live.waterforthethirsty.com. Played just fine the last time. Don't know what's going on. LIVE. I hate these touch things. Alright. Now, let's see if we
it didn't do it.
Yeah.
Lose it.
Mm-hmm.
How about now? That's what we can do. We can refresh the page. Go to what if it's thirsty. So yeah, that's
So
live.
you're
This is
good.
delayed.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a delay on
So they're looking at us, looking at.
Yes.
this.
Why is this so delayed though? Anyway, it's broadcasting live over there and on YouTube. You can just let people know to go over there if they need to. They want to stay.
What were you saying?
So when Jared was making the point of God being far away, or the presence of God wasn't like immediately in the middle of the camp, it made me think of, let's say we're not God, like the presence is not being felt anymore, and the stories really aren't being passed down, so you kind of have a shift in, or your view of who God is kind of, it's like, oh, okay, he's really far off, I don't really know him that well. Like, I heard my ancestors talk about him, but I don't really know him for myself. And so that's the story that you pass on. And I kind of feel like that's what I got from my home church and
So-
my ancestors.
So let me ask you a question. So given all of that, when you have kids, what will change?
So
Like what would you do differently?
I feel like, so for me, I would have to figure out my whys first. But I also feel like there needs to be a certain level of complete and total transparency. Like, not just thou shalt not, but I've done this before and here's what I found. Here's what works. Here's what happened to me, and here's why I don't. Be transparent, you know.
Because this transparency gets you to the point where they.
I don't necessarily know if that will. It might help them make better informed decisions, or at least they'll have the knowledge to know, okay, mom did this, and this is kind of the end result. Like, this is how it turned out for her. So this is a possibility. Like, I know that this might happen if I go down this route.
Because is the fear that those who, like, if we create, for lack of a better term, like robots, like people that just do, right? And they just, this what is done, this tradition,
Right.
that over time they fall off, like judges. I mean, they
Right.
just,
So
there's no care, there's no.
oh, this came up in my textbook. So I've been doing, taking a psychology class, and they were talking about doing the phase, like, it's called emergent adulthood, that a lot of people just kind of fall off of their religious beliefs because it feels so impersonable. And I was like, I had this thought like when this came up last month, but to see it again in the book, I was like, see, that's the problem. God is not a personable, we're not passing down
Personable
hey,
God.
this person is your friend. Like, he wants to be in relationship with you. It's not just follow the rules in the book and that's it. Like, we're not passing that down, and what end up happening is people are just like, this isn't for me, and exit stage left. I don't know if they come back, but I think the issue is just that we're not passing down a God that's relatable. Yeah.
So, how do you pass on an abstract God, though?
You would have an abstract understanding of
Oh,
who he is.
well, let me put it this way.
That's you can't ask that question.
Well, let me ask it this way then. So, when people live in struggle or, financial struggle, right? And they get help from people and, they're making it, through whatever means. And then they transition into a place where things are now comfortable. And now they have these kids in this environment where they want to protect and shelter them from that bad experience that they had. Do you think that sometimes they not forget but put aside the way life used to be and the things that helped them get over now that they're in this new space because it's a new reality and they don't want to pass on the challenges of the old reality onto the new reality, and bringing up those stories and telling those things about, well, we used to have to carry water from here to there back and forth when all I had to do is turn on a tap and the kids are like, well, I don't care about that.
Right.
Yeah, I have flushing, my toilet flushes. I don't have to go outside in the night when it's raining to pee. You know what I'm saying? The conversation changes, the experience changes, and sometimes the emphasis changes. I guess when the situation changes that drastically, how do you preserve the elements? Because one of the things that made God significant in the wilderness was the fact that it was a wilderness, right? That the wilderness experience played a big part in how they saw, view, and understood God. When they transitioned, it's no more wilderness. It's now vines and fig trees for everybody, house for everybody living nice. How do you?
There's still other stuff happening though.
And that's the
There's
thing. And
another
that's one of the
wilderness.
That's one of the flaws of that Christianity is kind of developed, is that whenever someone's doing ministry, it's always for the poor, like people that don't have, like, and we've made Christianity, this cure. Let's call it cure and crutch for like the struggle, whatever it is. Because we listen to it, it's like, he was a doctor in the sick room, like, he was and I'm just like, yo, what if you're not sick, like, like what if you're, you work every day.
Who is God to you when you're doing?
When you
don't
struggling. Have those.
When you don't have physical struggles.
Yeah, I think that's where you're. Along the lines where you're coming.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, Avanique was like, there are other things. Like, no one's life is perfect.
Right.
Right, and I think that's why the Who, in my opinion, is the way to go, because, or who the focus should be on, because that's the one thing that's consistent.
So this week, so I had this one thing, right? This one thing that I've been trying to get God to answer. So trying to get God to open this door, and I'm actively praying.
You're trying to get him to open the door?
Yes. I've been actively praying about it for a couple of years now. And his answer hasn't been no, it's been more of a not right now. And then this week, for a moment, I thought, oh shoot, the door's open. And immediately my mindset went to, yo, what's about to come next? Like, what am I about to struggle through next? Because
now the door is open. This isn't it. Like, this has been like the bane of my existence, and the door is open. What am I, like, I'm about to get tripped up by something next, and I don't know what it's about to be, but it has to be worse than this. And I was like, that's so weird. Who thinks like that?
I don't know. I was just like, literally, every time I thought the situation was going to resolve itself, like in my mind, I'm like, yo, am I going to be as dependent on God? Or is God going to have to send something else to keep me dependent on him? I don't know.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Like,
Well, why doesn't
the thing about David when you read and go through all of the exploits of David, like David went through some bad times, right? But even when the times David was in was like he was king and he had all the women he wanted and all the money he wanted and all that kind of stuff, like there were still the Bible still had drama. Like it was all drama, like his whole life. Right. Some of it's self-inflicted. Some of it's just what you have when you're king or president. Like you have haters. Like so. But no matter what it is, there were always issues. Like there was always something. And I think God still, no matter how good you think you have it or other people think you have it, like there's always something that you have to, that God requires you to be dependent on for. And so it doesn't have to look like the struggle like everybody else says or thinks or thinks it should look. But part of his, we're imperfect people living in an imperfect world, and he's trying to make us perfect through him.
So, to be fair to the people here, Moses told them, make sure and tell the stories to your kids. Write it on the walls, talk about it when you sit down, when you're getting up, because, when you transition into the new land, you're likely to forget.
Sure.
And you're likely to forget that God brought you here and you set this up for yourself because you start to become comfortable in your own experience. But one of the things that stood out to me in this text is not that they didn't know about, is that they didn't know the Lord. Like, they didn't have a relationship with him. And one of the things that I hear in Avanique's question, her initial question was, what she was passed down was knowledge but not relationship. Like, she was not encouraged to know who this person was and experience him. It was, this is the way we live now, and just live this way, and that's enough. And I think that is one of the things that we probably can draw out of the text, is the importance of the relationship informing the who, informing the what, and the way we live. And I think sometimes it becomes so easy to get caught up in why we got to here and how we got to here, and keeping that before us as we continue to live this way. And I could see that even in like things we do in church. Like, people think things that are happening in church and the way church is structured right now is so sacred, when they were functional and day-to-day reasons why it was designed this way, and we just inherited that.
Correct.
Right. It made sense for the people at the time to do it that way, but we inherited and ascribed value to it, and elevated it without even thinking about why we're doing it like this, and what is the overall objective that this thing is supposed to facilitate, and asking the question, is it facilitating that thing in its current state? Is there some tweak that we need to leave? And that all stems from a question of keeping the who and the why before us.
And that's why I look at God, and the Bible says God was the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. But I look at God as there's evolution to it too. And we evolved. Or not evolved, but we evolved.
Right.
Based upon culture and times and all these various things. It's the same God in the U.S. that's in, a village in Africa, or that doesn't have running water, and it's or Asia that doesn't have any significant mode of transportation.
The same God who was in America when it didn't have those things.
And the same God that had, it's all the same.
this dude's not different.
Right.
Things have changed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think God is big enough to handle and understand that change. So as things get better, whatever that is, and people become more comfortable, he's going to become a less significant God.
Right.
Right. Like we level up. This isn't I moved up. Like let me forget.
Correct.
Right.
And I mean, there's been this study about that was done years ago about the secularism in Europe and how it spread to the U.S. and how the wealthier people get, the less
They perceive a need for God.
they perceive a need for God.
Which is this.
And so now you go to Europe and yeah, good luck. And it's getting that way here as well.
Why can't we level, like why can't it be I was struggling down here and I got it up here, but this is a us thing. Like I'm trying to
Give me more on that.
like, why does moving from rags to riches mean that God's kind of like, I don't really need you anymore? Like, is God being perceived as the person that gets you through the struggle? Is that the problem?
I think the problem shows in...
That's actually, there's a lot of reasons. You see something?
I think that there's some explanation here in the verses that carries over from time to time and place to
You read
place.
Judges 3 still?
Yeah, Judges 2:11. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord and served somebody else. They forsook the Lord, the God of their ancestors who brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshipped various other things based on the environment that they were in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't actually say that, but that's what it's saying. This aroused God's anger because they forsook him, they abandoned him, and paid attention to something else, and allowed that to order their steps. And I think that's kind of what happens. You know, something else becomes God. Something else becomes the source of your living. Something else becomes the director of your way. And when that happens, and somehow financial blessing tends to facilitate that. Not that all the time and not for everybody, because you have people like Job and Abraham and these guys, you know, who were a little bit more faithful than some others. But
Because that's
in the society, maybe individually it's easier, but as a society, you find that there's that shift that takes place as the society becomes more affluent.
Oh, tell Ron to come back over.
because
never mind.
because the thing, like,
I'll have his number.
if God is your cure for the struggle,
Right, when we're not struggling no more,
and then you lose the struggle,
I don't need him.
then
But
it almost becomes a, you know, this memorial plaque. Like, you just use God as a, oh yeah,
Back when I was
you
struggling
did,
with God.
yeah, you hook, yeah, and you come up and touch them on your way out the door.
Which then brings in the question, what's the point of God? You know,
There is no point. No, I'm just kidding.
or what's his role in life if it's not to bring you out of the struggle or help you through the struggle? Because I think I asked that because answering that question allows us to better appreciate him in the struggle and out of the struggle.
Correct.
And if we don't have the answer to that question is not firm and clear, you can easily do the slide.
So if you saw Sam coming down the steps and like he was about to fall and you could tell he was about to fall, would you just be like, wouldn't you go and help him
At his
Depends.
age.
at his age?
Okay.
And then would the relationship still not be there
Depends.
afterwards?
Depends.
After you helped them.
Right.
The relationship will be there, yes, after I helped him.
Yeah.
Right.
These kids, no, they don't. Like,
Yeah, from my standpoint, as the parent
Right.
standpoint,
he knows he's
The only time he called
Like, I
out
still
for me
question
is,
my kids' love. Like, my kids don't love me. I told them that the other day. I was like, y'all don't love me. Like, when I get you what you want,
Right.
everything's cool.
Yeah.
Like, if I didn't get you what you want, you throw it. Like, you don't. Like, there's zero love. But they're incapable of doing it based
Right.
upon
Where they are.
where they are,
Mhm.
and that's kind of.
I don't know. I don't want to say God is a friend because that sounds real just cliche. But I feel like he is a friend and a father. Like, listen, I'm gonna struggle through with you, but when we go to the next level, we go to the next level.
But he didn't. I guess my thing is like he didn't look at. He didn't draw close to the children of Israel because of the struggle.
He didn't.
The struggle, like, if the emphasis is on the struggle, then the emphasis is on the wrong syllable. Like, it can't be the struggle.
Right.
Like, it has to be, and we always say it, like, it's that posture before him for your, like, guiding your life
Mm-hmm.
throughout.
Right.
Struggle
Right?
or-
So struggle or not, or
Right.
like, if the struggle's a part of that growth,
Right.
then you go through the struggle, but that's a part of the growth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then you move on to the next one, and then you move on to the next, and you move on to the next, and to move on to the next doesn't mean better.
Right.
It's just another phase
Right.
of this growth that God is trying to do, because ultimately there's a reason why he's placed you on this earth, and it may not be to do well,
That's true.
or it may, you know, it may have a completely different reason when you're, you know, I put you on this earth because at 71 I need you to do this, and everything I'm taking you through is just preparing you
For that.
for that one moment.
Perhaps.
Right?
Yes. Mhm.
I mean,
That's
it's all
possible.
of these things. So, like, you know, maybe you hit your peak, you know, when you were 12, and everything else just carried. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yo, that's so
Like-
scary.
That was your moment. You can go sit on the bench now.
I remember talking to
That's
my
funny.
doctor, and she was like, she was doing something. She was running a test or something like a few years ago, and she's like, "Man, I'm gonna pray for you, and like we're gonna have this moment." And I was like, "Man, I really need to hear that." And she was like, "That's what I'm here for." I was like, "But this might have been like the
Her
moment."
moment.
Like
That's
everything
it.
else, like is inconsequential. Like it means nothing. Like you were here.
Right.
But I just don't think that God is not a God of struggle.
I don't think he is either.
Like
And
God
I
is,
also think that what we call struggle, God's just like, dude,
Yeah,
like,
well,
what are you doing? It's not that deep.
it's time, right? Like we can struggle for a year, and even when you look back on it, you're like, man, that was a rough year. But when like
It's like 2
you know,
minutes. In heaven.
20 years from removed, you're like, that was nothing.
But even just in priorities, like right now, Julian's struggling to do the buttons on his shirt, and every time he has to do a shirt with buttons, it's like,
It's like,
yeah, another one. Why? Right? And I'm like, dude, it's just
their butt,
just a button.
their butt.
It's like
not
it's a
big
button.
deal.
Why?
God's probably doing the same thing. Like, Av is just a button.
And that's actually really good
Button
because
your shirt.
because over time,
And look, pay attention to the button. Don't try to do the button by feel. You're not a superstar. I mean, you're not that familiar with the
Right.
button experience, and you could just, close your eyes and do it. You need to pay attention to
so
the
you're just
button.
talking about the button, just the actual, just
pushing the button.
pushing the button through the hole, not necessarily lining buttons up.
Well, even that. Because sometimes I just say, just do the one. Just that one.
Right. Master that one
Just
thing.
find that one, find the hole for it, and button it. And he did it. He's like, look, I did it. It's like, wrong hole. You gotta do it again.
Never mind. That was like this. That's,
Stop it.
never mind.
Anyway, my point is that for him it's a big deal.
Right.
Correct.
and probably an inconvenience. Why
Right.
can't you just do the button for me? Why are you putting me to the struggle of fighting with this button? And I know that you're going to go to school and you may have to change your clothes and then you have to put your button on for yourself. I'm not going to be here every day and I need you to know how to do the button, so I need you to struggle through it. I'm going to sit here and watch you. I'm going to be here to help you and guide you and tell you how to do the button and when you miss it and give you little tips on how to do it. But I can't take away the experience of the struggle in the button because it's something that you need to mature and grow and be self-sufficient.
And be mature and grow, and I guess, and understand that I'm here. And if I'm here for the button, then I'm going to be here when it's a bigger problem.
Right.
Correct.
Right? Because I was here for the button. Like, this button means absolutely nothing.
To him, it's the end of the world, though.
You know?
But yeah.
But when you're struggling through this job or a test or an illness, you know, or deciding what job to take, you know, I'm gonna be there as well.
Sure?
So Arlene said it's about being in the relationship, and then she said growth happens through the struggle.
And sometimes we try to skip it because we don't share the same perspective.
Right.
We share the why am I doing this button thing? I have my shirt on already. It doesn't really matter whether the shirt is buttoned or not.
I agree.
And if it's such a big deal, then you do it. Alright? You do it. And that's kind of how I feel like we are sometimes.
Yeah.
So, tied to this, 2 Samuel 14:14, I made this observation on May 24th when we read this. 2 Samuel
2 Samuel what?
14:14. And I drew a conclusion that was, affirmed 2 days later. What?
I'm reading it.
That's just
I'm reading it, and it just hurt my feelings.
Read it.
that's just a bad opening line.
Like,
It is. This is what version that you read it.
I'm
It
NIV,
is!
but I'm just like,
Okay.
I need to go back to the whole thing and read the context. That just go ahead.
Like water spilled on the ground, which cannot be recovered, so we must die. But that is not what God desires. Rather, He desires ways. Oh no! Rather, He devises ways so that a banished person does not remain banished from Him.
And what I put there is that God's primary concern with us is reconciliation and relationship. And He'll, by any means necessary, create opportunities to facilitate both, to bring us back into relationship with Him, and so that we could be in relationship with Him. And I think that is what God is. He's the guy, the creator of our lives, who wants to do life with us and have us experience fullness of life with Him. And the life has ebbs and flows, ups and downs, but He's journeying with us through the experiences of life. And then there's this primary essence of reconciliation, which I have other texts to support that as well, but because our emphasis here was the relationship part, the effort at reconciliation is a demonstration of the emphasis of relationship. And I think, He doesn't desire that we die, but goes out of His way to, then He would go out of His way to provide in the desert, and then go out of His way to walk with us when we're doing well, because what He ultimately wants is to dwell. And if you think about the journey of God throughout the Bible, He comes and He places man in the garden and lives with him. Man comes and separates himself from Him, and He puts this plan to bring us back together. Then He chooses His people and chooses to dwell among them in the temple, in the smoke. Then He sends Jesus in person to live among men. And then, when Jesus goes, He sends the Holy Spirit to live among men, to then come back with Jesus and dwell among men again. So it's like that emphasis is God's just trying to continually bridge the gap and live here together with us and do, as we say, do life with us.
So then, do we create the gap when we pass down just the rules without the relationship?
It could be an assumption that everybody knows this, because sometimes you be in environments and there's assumed knowledge that everybody knows why we're doing this, and so you only speak to the thing because there's this
The assumption
there's
that
an assumption that it's clear to everyone. And you don't have to keep talking about we do this because we do this because we do this,
which is a
because.
flaw in the system.
I agree, because if I'm born into it, and between the age where I can comprehend and adulthood, no one ever really.
Well, it's a flaw. It's a flaw in so many different ways because even with the system that's created where you're going out there being fishers of men and the idea is to bring them into the church. If that's your idea, the assumption from the front should always be there are new people here. So I
Right.
should never make the assumption that everybody knows.
Right.
And we hear it from the pulpit, like we're all this in here,
Right.
you know. So I'm not gonna cover that because no, you probably should
So give a little context.
give a little context because that's kind of going against
Right,
what your
right.
whole mission is. You're just expecting that no one new is here.
That's a big flaw.
The other thing I was thinking about is like, you know, when we're dealing with the girls, as parents, and God isn't like this. As parents, we try to develop outcomes, right? And so the rules help us develop outcomes because rules are more predictable. If you're able to follow these rules, right? It's like ingredients for a cake. Like as long as you do what the ingredients say, you're gonna be a cake. You're gonna have a cake at the end, and it's gonna taste this particular way because you obeyed and followed all the directions. Well, life and relationship with God isn't like that,
Right.
right? And so as parents, you know, and all parents fall in this, like you want your kids to be a certain way. We have this idea, but that's not how this whole thing works. And so by talking to them about the stories and talking about the why and introducing them to the who and developing that relationship, there is a risk, right? That your kid is not going to be and end up where you want them to be. Now it might be right where God wants them to be,
Right.
but it violates everything and all of your it may violate all of your expectations
Right.
or expectations that others may place on them
Because we share different priorities from what God is.
because we
Right.
share a different
I
view.
don't have in mind the concerns of God. Ron asks, is the passing down only to be meant through verbal recounting of stories or enforcing of laws alone? How big is our action in the passing down? That's a good question.
I think action plays a huge part in that.
Yeah, I mean,
I think verbal is important because everyone will learn. Everyone learns different, but I think you kind of have to mix both. Because I'm not a verbal person. Like if I'm sitting in a lecture class, I zone out because I need to get involved. I need to do it myself. I need to figure it out myself. But action, like if I can see you do something, I'd be like, oh, okay.
well, we mimic, right?
Right.
In every way, like we mimic, like the way your dad. Like I look at my kids and my wife make fun of me because I write in all caps, like all the time.
My supervisor told me
Like
stop.
even
doing that.
lowercase all caps. Right?
You write in lowercase all caps?
Yeah,
What
so
does that
I'll
mean?
do the big K, but I'll do the capital E, but it's smaller. ANRIC, like, and I'll go back with the big W, then the smaller uppercase A. Like I write in all caps, right? But I also remember looking at my dad. Like I saw my dad's like he writes in all caps too sometimes.
Right.
Right? And I look at like the way I write and the way I write like looks a little bit like his hand. Like
We do.
and so we mimic, things that are familiar to us. So actions are very important and they're crucial. And most kids, as much as they don't want to, they're like their parents.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting that Ron asked that question because the instruction Moses gave almost synthesizes both. we could turn to Deuteronomy 6. Deuteronomy 6 from verse 1. He says, "These are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you, your children, and the children after them may fear God as long as you shall live by keeping all the decrees, commands that I give you, so that you may enjoy long life." And I feel like they heard the first part, highlighted the first part, and emphasized the first part,
And that was it.
right? The decrees and the laws teach them, right? Which is what we hear.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Hear, Israel, and be careful to obey them, so that it may go well with you." Here's the why you need to do this.
Right.
"And that you may increase greatly in the land flowing milk and honey, just as the Lord God of your ancestors promised you." All right, so pay attention to that. We hear it locked in, boom. But he goes on to say, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when
Sit
you
at home.
action.
And when
Sit
you-
at home, walk on the road,
Lie.
lie down, and get up." So you're doing the verbal as you do the
That's
do the
life. Yeah.
right? Tie them as symbols on your hands and on your forehead, so now that they're visible and you can't escape them. And when it's on your hand, as you do stuff, you're gonna see it and think about it, and then it's gonna become points of conversation, because now you have to explain why it's there as you're doing the stuff. Write them on the door frame so that you see them as you go in and you come out on the gates. You know. Then he goes on to talk about some other things there, but I wanted to point out, you know, what Ron was bringing out about the action
Yeah.
is that the two is a hand clap, or it appears to be a hand clap.
That was a good point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we do that. We remember to teach the commands and the laws, but not in the context of everyday life.
Right, living life. And then it kind of just creates a situation where it's like, okay, this is a taboo area. I don't know what to do.
It's almost like God trying to force us to interact with one another, force us to talk to one
But
another.
there's an order that he placed in it, right? You teach and you learn the laws and those rules, right? Well, let's just call them laws. I'm not gonna call them rules, but those laws
It's three things: commands, decrees, and laws.
and laws, and then you live those laws and decrees and commands, and so the action is followed. The action follows
The guidelines.
the guidelines and the teachings
Yeah.
of it. Typical to school, or how school should be. These are the principles, and this is how the principles are applied. Right? And then you do your labs, where you're applying
The
the principles that you learned.
And you show whether you
before.
actually understand the
But
principles.
you got to
or
know
not.
the principles before you go into the lab. You can't
Right.
just start doing it and then learn the principles. It's ineffective.
So you missed the labs.
You missed the labs.
Mr. Labs.
They didn't do labs in your school.
And even they did.
It was straight
They did it.
books.
It was straight books, yo. And it's,
Books test. Books test.
I actually know it
It's
is
like,
good.
can we go out and like, nope, just memorize.
Yeah. And I'm not, like, even now, as a student, I can't just sit here and read. I need practical, like, I need practical experience. I need to get involved. Or else they just be like, in one ear, the other. And I might pass the test because I memorized it, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really
it
grasp the
adds no
concept.
value.
Right.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
So, lesson. We can't do the takeaway yet. The lesson is life together is important. Kendrick, talk to me.
What stood out? There were a couple things. One was, it's not even a big conversation. It was in First Chronicles. Was it
You all see the
9,
video with the guy reading
10?
reading the Bible in numbers?
Didn't
Yeah, I saw your-
I did not tag you on it.
I saw that.
That's funny. What's up, Lorraine?
Did we do 10 before?
What? 10 what?
Before the First Chronicles 10? I couldn't remember if it was on this part of this reading or the last thing.
I don't think we did 10 this week, but it's been like 2 weeks.
No, I mean on this round.
Oh.
No, First Chronicles 10 was quite back in the middle of May.
I mean, mine was probably in April if it makes you feel any better.
It was the middle of May?
May 17.
Okay. Because I don't know why. I went through and kind of read. I was reading it again, I guess, back when close. And even like this week I was reading, I don't know why, but I went back to this and read it again. Like it troubled me. Like verse 13 of 10 was like, Saul died because he was unfaithful to the Lord. And I was just thinking, like, no one would ever say that. That's the reason why someone died.
No, I don't have your notification ringtone. That was something else.
No, I guess the game started.
Hey, you know what I'm saying?
I think it keeps interrupting, but it's coming back on.
I don't know, man. This Facebook thing is. Anyway, you were saying.
It says Saul died because he was unfaithful to the Lord. He did not keep his word of the Lord and even consulted a medium for guidance. He did not inquire of the Lord, so the Lord put him to death and turned the kingdom over to David, son of Jesse. And so I was like, I always think about my death. Whenever it's going to be. And so when I was reading this, I was like, I mean, there are things I've done that are, whatever. There's just, some things aren't good things. And I just wonder, like, Saul, I don't know if Saul realized that he was being put to death because of his unfaithfulness.
I'm sure he was. Because God told him so. God told him so.
So you think Saul lived the rest of his life knowing that he wasn't in God's presence?
That he kept himself out? Yes. That's why he ended up going to the witch. Why did he go to the witch?
Because he needed answers.
He could go to was Samuel still around?
Samuel was dead.
Samuel was dead. That's the reason why he showed up on the.
But he said like God wasn't talking to him.
Which is my point. So, have you ever been in a situation where you didn't believe God was talking to you?
Yeah, but
okay, so,
but it's not 1-to-1 because
how is it not 1-to-1? If you don't think God talking to you, he don't think God talking to you. He ain't talking. I mean,
no, God was not talking to him. It wasn't like he was thinking God was not talking to him. God wasn't talking to him.
So you're saying when you experienced God not talking to you, you don't know for sure that God's not talking to you.
I'm saying in Saul's case, God had already spoken and Saul kept asking. Saul was not asking for God to talk to him, to be in relation, to have conversation with him. Saul was asking God to tell him
what to do. Correct.
And God had already told him what he needed to do. And so it's like, when your kid keep coming to you to ask you the same question over and over and over, after a while you stop. Because, there's nothing more to be said. I've already said everything I want to say. You now just being difficult. So, and now you can choose to do what I told you or not.
So I'm not there. I can't
I can't see Saul. That life sucks.
But it's a life that he chose. He didn't have to stay there.
So
When you consider what happened to Manasseh,
he's living a life of no hope. Like he knows. You're saying that he knew he had zero hope.
no, as long as he is alive, he had hope. He was choosing to stay the course he was on. Like, because Manasseh was several times worse than Saul in terms of what he did and what he didn't do. And when Manasseh came to himself, he said, God, I'm sorry. And God said, I got you, boy. And Manasseh's whole experience changed. You see the same thing with Nebuchadnezzar. He was doing things, God was blessing him in the ignorance that he had, or the little knowledge of God that he had. And then when he stepped outside of what God wanted, and then even while he had the mind of an animal, he still had the presence of mind enough to turn around. What made David different from Saul is immediately when he's confronted, he makes the posture adjustment. Saul never makes a posture adjustment. Saul, like Pharaoh, never makes the posture adjustment. Like,
And so Saul, going back to the original, so you believe Saul knew, like consciously knew, that he was living his life, and
there's some people who just say, I good.
no, yeah. Do you think Saul was like,
I think Saul got to that point, yeah.
well, I'm good, like whatever happens?
No, but I'm not going to humble myself. I ain't going back and ask for forgiveness. There are people like that, they're just bad mind like that. Like, you know who's one like that? Asa. Now, Asa never worshipped another god, but he never asked God for help. He went and he figured out a way to make this thing work, and he figured out I could do this on my own. And
Ron said, first Z and Pharaoh, and now Kendrick and Saul.
No. Yo, so there were a couple things that stood out. It was I can't see Saul like that. The other thing is that
why can't you see him like that?
because and maybe this is just me. Like, it's very hard for me to believe that somebody
Oh.
that he was walking around just not.
No, it came up on your phone.
Somebody was walking around now, what?
You're good. That somebody, like, he's just walking around knowing that he has no hope.
I don't think Saul was walking around knowing he had no hope. I think Saul made a decision about how he was going to live his life. I have a partner who grew up in church. Right? We went to Pathfinders together. We sang in a choir together. We went to church school together. And he came to a point where, based on what was happening in his home and in his life and how church people interacted with him and his family, that he ain't doing church. He ain't doing church thing. He might have a respect and a fear for God to an extent, but he's going to do whatever the heck he wants. And whatever happens to him as a result of that, that's where he is. I'm not saying Saul says whatever happens to me as a result of that, but Saul made to me a similar kind of mental decision. I'm aware of what this dude wants from me, but I am deciding that this is what I am going to do and justify it with whatever reasons. Like, so you could almost say that, I know the scripture doesn't say for sure that this is what it is, but Saul feeling like, this throne is being taken away from him could have embittered him to humbling himself before God. All right? Mm-hmm. So now he's trying to win it back through his own strength. All
right.
And you saw that with how he dealt with David and how he dealt with Jonathan as a result of it. How he spent almost the rest of his life pursuing
This
David
Yeah.
to try and undo that because he refused to accept what God said.
Sure.
Which is different from Moses, who was like, "Yo, can I please go into the promised land? Can we?" Moses could have said, "You know what? You know what?
We going.
Why y'all stay here? I'm gonna sneak out in the night. I'm gonna make the journey just to touch it, just to see it." Right? He could have done that,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't. He's like, "All right, God, that's what you say. Then I'm gonna go up on the mountain over here and die." Like, so, and that to me, that's a significant point about Saul that is lost in the stories because we tend to just look at the details of the activities and not the posture that informs the activities. And I think what you see in particularly the book of Samuel is the author of Samuel is contrasting Saul and David and does a good job of showing that David had as much flaws or did things that were even worse than Saul in terms of measuring just the thing itself. But his posture was one of contrition. Saul was the guy who banished all the mediums, trying to be faithful to God. And then when God wasn't hearing from him, he didn't humble himself and say, "God, please." It's like, I'm gonna find out my own way.
So I've never looked at it from him having the posture of not humbling himself, and that he had room for forgiveness. And I guess that's a flaw of mine. Like it's God.
I mean, Ecclesiastes talks about that. It's better a live dog than a dead lion. Once you're dead, you don't have any recourse. So as long as you're alive, you can make a choice. And there's so many stories in the Bible where that is true. That's why I like Manasseh and Nebuchadnezzar, because they like poster children for that.
Mm-hmm.
Judas, if he had waited a day, he could have changed his posture. And I love that the Bible included Asa, because Asa talks up to church folks who are like, "Well, I never went and party, and I never went and drink, and but you didn't trust God to deal with your circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
And you held on to that till the day you died. Like, you get a foot disease and you didn't even pray. You just went by the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You never asked God for help and never brought yourself around to see the need to involve God in the process. And here what God is trying to do, by any circumstance, get you to reconcile with him. And so yeah, Saul died because he was unfaithful. I don't think God would have restored Saul's king back to him, but I think God would have been nice to him.
Yeah. I mean, God, we saw all throughout, we saw Uzzah, we saw, the fact that David couldn't build a temple. I mean, there's so many different.
It's freezing up again. Lauren just tapped out because of it. She's wondering if it's herself. But no, it's us. That video over there is fine.
But it's not streaming?
But in the relay from here to in the broadcast.
In the broadcast, it's not.
It's not.
The other thing I had a question about was, what was the difference between David counting the people and David counting the priests?
I am not sure. When you look at that in terms of the text.
So David. Come on. So it would have been Chronicles was 20? 21.
You said First Chronicles or second?
First. It's where he started counting the people, the soldiers.
I always thought it was all the people.
Or taking a census of Israel. But then in 23, he gathered together all the leaders of Israel and then starts giving the total number.
I guess.
This is just
Is
Put a
YouTube still
message in
running?
here.
Yeah, YouTube is still
YouTube,
running
yeah.
because it's running from the computer and it's on the landline. This is on wireless over the air, and so
Oh, gotcha.
it just may be fatiguing because of the nature of the content. It might just be fatigue
From what? From YouTube? From Facebook?
from the Wi-Fi. Yes.
Or the Wi-Fi?
The Wi-Fi.
Yes, I definitely think it's a Wi-Fi situation. It's like it's
Or you could kill it. You can kill it there and just message everybody and tell them to come over to YouTube if they want.
I message them. Like on
Oh, the camera's
I'm
running.
gonna drop a message in there. Everyone should be able to see it, right?
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
just go to the
Send it.
link.
So the camera's on YouTube. The camera's feeding directly.
The camera is feeding directly to YouTube.
Okay.
The phone is going to
It's
Facebook,
going to Facebook,
because
okay.
we were having issues streaming
from
from the
the
camera to Facebook.
Got you.
let me know when you send it. I'll give it a few minutes because it takes a while.
What's the link again?
live.waterfulthirty.com. It's 9:30, so we could probably wrap up and then just have our conversations on our own. Hey. Thank you, Facebook. Thank you, Facebook.
Alright, I dropped the info in there.
So I think the motivations might be different for the two. In counting the army, David was
About him.
about him. In counting the priest, it was efficiency for service for God. There's no direct benefit to David in the counting.
So
of
that
the
was
priest.
the only.
That would be my guess, because of the way God reacted. Because of the way God reacted.
Because I thought God was like, he said, at some point he said, don't count them. Like he gave instructions. And I think we read it back when we were reading like through Deuteronomy or Numbers or whatever. Where God gave instructions on not to count, period.
Yeah, because then you kind of feel confident in your numbers and your ability. Like,
Sure.
my army is this big, and so now I'm relying on the strength of my army
As opposed to.
as to relying on God. And when you have the number like, wow, we have 1 million men, wow, that's a big army, as opposed to we have an army and God fights with us, no matter how many people we have.
Mhm.
So yeah. Alright,
What you got?
Me, I had a few things, but I'm gonna share one of them. It's from the book of Psalms, Psalm 119.
I haven't read Psalms this year.
Psalm 119. You lying with Kendrick too much.
Convert.
No, I just
No, I feel you.
I read it already.
119.
You start moving the camera, and all of a sudden the connection
It's better.
is better.
Interesting.
Like, you move the camera, and all of a sudden it stops sticking.
Everything just pops popping up.
Mm-hmm.
My hand,
Your hand.
everything.
Yeah, and
I
I
can
think
never
maybe it
find-
was that. Maybe the
It was just in a bad area.
Connection.
no. Maybe
No, it's still
the
interrupting.
inactivity that's sitting still.
It's still interrupting.
Yeah, because she hit
Oh.
Oh,
she hit and she ended the feed.
Oh.
What do you want to do?
Yeah, you can just put the phone down. It's done now.
You said 119, right?
Yeah, Psalm 119,
What?
verse 71, around there.
Yo, this chapter was long.
Yeah, it's the longest chapter in the Bible.
There's a Yoda?
There's a letter, yes.
That's Yoda?
Mm-hmm. So the description of one of the Hebrew letters, I think.
Oh.
Psalm 119, I think it's around 71, verse 71. Let me see if I can find it right quick. It is verse 71. It was good for me to be afflicted, so that I might learn your decrees. I was like, what
You on
a
your
perspective.
you on your own.
And then he goes on in 75 and 76. I know, Lord, that your laws are righteous, and that in faithfulness you have afflicted me. in God's faithfulness, He's afflicted me with
I believe
buttons.
I believe
Buttons.
that. I believe
Right?
that kind of stuff. Yes.
May your unfailing love be my comfort, according to your
Where are you now?
76,
76.
Oh, 76.
75 and 76. May your unfailing love be my comfort, according to your promise to your servant. So he is having an understanding that it's his unfailing love that has brought the challenge. He's not asking for deliverance from the challenge, but for comfort during the challenge. The writer here or the speaker here has an understanding of what God wants and the nature of the relationship. And the relationship is a trusting one where you have nothing but my best interests at heart. So in your unfailing love, you've afflicted me. Be my comfort. And you've afflicted me so you can help me learn your decrees. Like,
Yeah, because 67 was like, before I was afflicted, I went astray.
mhm.
But now I obey your word.
That's a really interesting perspective, and I don't know if I can, live in that space to see and hear things in that manner. And I just thought it was interesting to share.
Yeah.
But you shared something similar to that when you were talking about your mom the other day.
Yeah, she was afflicting her. I talking about me now.
Yeah.
It's one thing when he afflicting her and she living it, and I get to watch. It's like, oh, that's a good lesson over there.
Keep that over there.
But when it's now me over here,
Then it's a problem.
I don't know that I could say that in the moment. She was able to see it.
Yeah, maybe
She was able to
like
make these statements. I don't know.
down the line or something.
Yeah, so that was.
But should you ever think you're
ever think of what?
should you ever think you're ready or able to make those statements? Like that's like if you think you're able to make the statements, then
I mean,
I mean, does it?
there are things in life that while I was going through them, I was having a Julian moment. But then later on, I was just like, oh, that was definitely like, that was needed. We needed to.
Yeah, no. I'm saying that. I'm saying, but in the moment, like if, or even before, like he's saying, I don't think I can make the statement. And I'm saying, if he sat up here was like, you know what? God is good, I can make that statement. Like, people be like, get out of here.
I would say that there are some people who there's certain types of experiences that no longer faze them.
Can they say that it no longer? You can look at them and say,
I can say for me, there's certain kinds of, like, for me, uncertainty about finance does not faze me in the way that it used to before. And if that comes around, I used to get flustered and bothered, and while it might be uncomfortable and may cause, now my problem with it is that it becomes a distraction from the other thing that I want to do more than a distress.
that's just,
Because of the circumstance. And so, in that sense, I could. But now there's some other things that may happen that may divert my attention, but that does not anymore. It's like, yeah, you could bring that. I don't have a problem with that. You might want to mix it up and bring something else. Which I think he did, but
like,
when I come to it, I'll talk about it.
I know you're a mixture.
Yeah, but again, God is just trying to reconcile and relate, and He does anything in His power to make that happen, to create opportunities for that to happen. And we just have to choose to respond while we have life. That's my takeaway.
Oh, that was your takeaway.
That's my takeaway.
Oh,
I mean, because all our conversations sat there today.
I guess we're going to takeaways.
For now, yeah, because it's 9:30.
So for me, I would say that there is an importance in acknowledging God and everything, and not acknowledging. There's an importance in the relationship, no matter what part of the journey I am on in life. Yeah.
What's the importance?
So I think how do I word this? So I think for me the importance would be just, staying in a relationship, like be in a relationship, live my everyday life like that's the homie.
Don't try to determine outcomes.
What do you mean by
Be. I think when I was the example I used with my girls and just even with me, there are ideas and there are things that lives that you want your kids to live and you expect to live or whatnot, and being in true relationship with God doesn't necessarily lead to those things, and so living absent of those expectations and those outcomes allows freedom for you to really achieve what God's called you to achieve.
Gotcha. Vanessa, I know it was stick and go. Stick
no
and
idea
go.
what you're talking about.
Okay.
Because what I found out, even on YouTube, it stops. So I really think it's the Wi-Fi.
Well, it can't be a Wi-Fi on YouTube. Something else.
It would do
The buffering?
Yeah.
There's something else going on. It's not the Wi-Fi.
I don't know. Something. So, yeah. Sorry, friends.
Alright.
We had bad connections today.
Struggling there.
Appreciate those who stuck with us and was able to glean anything from what we were talking about. Thank you for being willing to tune in and suffer through it. I'm going to try to see if we can clean up the back end and see what's going on. Because something has changed and I'm not sure what it is. And you don't get to know until you go live. Because we've been using the same settings for the last 5 years. So, okay. Father, we thank you again for your word and this opportunity to have conversation. We thank you for Kenrick and Avanique who took their time to participate in these conversations and to study the word and to seek to know you a little bit better so that in their areas of influence they can be salt and light. Thank you for Vanessa who tirelessly and consistently assists us in the back end. Thank you for her efforts as well. Be with everyone who tuned in today. May whatever they caught be a little bit of an encouragement to them to be more faithful to you in their study of the word and the way they live their lives. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Alright guys, till next time. We shall be better. Till then, drink up.
Drink up.
Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink.
is Water for the Thirsty.
Water for the thirsty.
Water for the Thirsty.
Water for the thirsty. Drink up. Drink up.
Drink up. Hashtag Instagram, Facebook. We all there. Follow us.